Welcome back to our live coverage now at Newzroom. Inside the main hall here, as we know, some of the main leaders still arriving, conversations underway behind closed doors, lunchtime-ish. I use the phrase lunchtime because it doesn't hold me to any specific time. We do actually expect that there will be some kind of public statement by President Cyril Ramaphosa ending the presidency, ending South Africa's presidency of the G20. But as you know, you saw Crispin Piri a little while ago. He's the spokesperson at the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. You saw William Baloyi from GCIS before that. You've seen many people speaking today. What seems to be a tone of positivity coming through from the South African government, from our government, about how well this has gone, and to an extent conversations about whether South Africa has made a sort of imprint in the G20. Peter Fabricius is an international journalist. He covers international affairs for the Daily Maverick, looks specifically at Africa as well. Peter, good morning. I really do appreciate the time. I mean, there's so much to look at, but would it be fair to say that South Africa has actually had a big impact on the G20, not just through hosting it here, but actually in terms of our sort of philosophy?
Absolutely. I think, look, we were building on quite a good foundation with the last three presidencies, Indonesia, India and Brazil. But I think we did very well to build on that foundation. And we really seem to have put a lot of the developmental issues of the developing world on the agenda. There's a big question now about what happens to them, you know, when the US takes over and so on. But I get the feeling that even if the US chucks them all out, they'll be revived, you know, subsequently. So that's quite positive.
I mean, in a way, if you read the sort of declaration, it's 30 pages, but towards the end, there's almost a nod to that actually this will continue no matter what.
Yeah. You know, there's been this strange sort of discussion going on about whether the handover ceremony might be from the US to the UK and then to us to get over this embarrassment of handing it over directly to the US. I don't think that's going to happen, but it tells you something about what the thinking is. I know there have been discussions between South Africa and the UK about keeping the agenda alive, you know. So that is definitely what South Africa's thinking is, you know.
So we've got all of these words on a page, and everybody sort of agreed to them, and there's lots of words and there are lots of pages. And excuse the cynicism, but does it kind of, I mean, to be blunt, does it mean anything? Do you think that this is one of those moments actually where we might see a change in the world?
Yeah, that would be pushing it a bit, I think. You know, look, I mean, what happens with these things is that, as we know, the G20 doesn't really make any binding decisions, but it sort of gathers a consensus of views. It's called a ginger group, according to Zane Dangor, the DG for JERCO, which means it gingers up other discussions. So some of these issues are given new life, they're revived. And yeah, I mean, like one thing, for example, in the inequality report of Joseph Stiglitz, there's a proposition to have an international panel, like the climate panel, to discuss inequality, you know, analyze it, research it, and push it forward. And that could be one concrete. It's not been agreed to, but it could be one of the kind of concrete decisions and that emerges from this conference. You know.
I've been so interested in kind of how our team sort of did.
Yeah.
And I mean, we made the point speaking yesterday, President Ramaphosa is a sort of consummate negotiator.
Yeah.
There are plenty of mining bosses who could tell you that if you forget. Yeah. And some of them based not far from here, actually. Do you think that this is a result of him? Is it a result of Zane Dangor, who has his own life experience? Yeah. Is it a result of a lot of other people in JERCO?
I think Zane had a big part of it. Certainly Cyril Ramaphosa gave it a lot of impetus. But to me, the touch of having the declaration adopted at the beginning had all the markings of a Cyril Ramaphosa strategist, you know, because what that did, and I think quite deliberately, was preempt any possibility of Argentina's, you know, representative at the table, the foreign minister, saying, well, the Sherpas might have agreed this, but they didn't really understand our position, which is actually this. And so that was off the tail, boom, you know, Argentina wasn't going to stand up at the start and look like they're blocking the whole process, you know, so that was quite a shrewd move. That looked Ramaphosa-esque to me.
Likes a little bit of an ambush sometimes. Yeah. It works, as we know. Okay, so we now have the situation where this goes to the States. And I mean, I asked Crispin Piri a little while ago if we needed to worry about American retaliation. He said no, and this wasn't just about South Africa. I mean, I take his point. But isn't Trump going to make it about South Africa because that serves his own domestic purposes?
To me, that remains a danger. So far, it's been ominously quiet on Truth Social. but that could change. I've seen some commentary from some of our trade people and so on, saying they don't think it's going to upset our trade negotiations, which have been going on forever, very protracted in the US, and remain always vulnerable, to this kind of thing. I don't know what I think the US actually took a bit of a blow here, because they were clearly seen to be the odd man out, the empty seat in the room, which isn't necessarily what you want to be, and they could see there was quite a lot of support behind South Africa, and they failed in getting South Africa to just issue a chair's statement rather than a declaration. That might play a role, but I mean, if Trump, of course, is entirely capable of just doing something, totally kind of vicious,
No, absolutely. I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen next. Tim Cohen has written a piece today in Currency News in which he suggests that this is a bit like a Suez moment. And what he means is it's a reference to an incident in the 1950s. You'll remember the Suez Canal was nationalized by Egypt. Britain thought that it would be able to sort of march in with help from France and just seize it back. The United States stayed out of it. And what that really showed, the reason that this was important, it showed that Britain could no longer behave as it had. It was no longer an imperial power. And Tim Cohen's comment is that this might be remembered as a kind of end or an important step down the road of the end of American power, because this is a moment where the rest of the world, the big nations in the world, the G20 nations, actually said, no, we're fine, we'll do it without you, and if we don't like the way you hold a meeting, we'll go to the next one. I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure if I'd put it quite as boldly as that, but Tim is a strong commentator. So, but there's certainly a feeling of it in that way, in that dimension, because one just definitely did get a feeling that the US took a bit of a hammering, and it almost seemed like South Africa was at last sort of standing up and saying, enough already, and with the support, I think you actually mentioned, with the support of, with your friends, the Europeans and others, and nobody actually standing up to object to your declaration, despite the fact that it's all the kind of things in it that the US hates, or Trump hates. One should clarify, really.
Peter Fabricius, really appreciate the time. Thank you very much indeed. He, of course, is a commentator at the Daily Maverick, an expert on international affairs, as you can see, and on the situation in Africa. Well, a lot going on, lots to chew over, Iman and Arabile, and many different sort of things to think about. We don't yet know what reaction, as Peter Fabricius was saying, we don't know what reaction there'll be from the White House. We don't yet know what will happen at the end of this, at the end of today, as we hand over that presidency to the United States. And I imagine a small room somewhere in a kind of sort of ceremony that's not particularly grand. And then, of course, the other thing is turning all of these words on this 30-page declaration into action. And that maybe is going to be the hard part. That said, so many of the nations here have agreed to it. They're clearly wholeheartedly behind it. They're enthusiastic about it. And in some ways, Iman, I suspect, Rabila, that this might actually turn out to have been a very important summit indeed.
You talked about all the things we don't know, Stephen, but what we do know, based on the evidence over the last couple of days and the way the presidency has managed this diplomatic fallout with Washington, is that South Africa is likely to be on top of it and handle it with grace and diplomacy, which we haven't seen too much when it comes to those relationships between Washington and Pretoria.
Yeah, so it's significant to be able to then understand where to from here.